And we are back. And can you believe we're back with the full crew? And it's been a while since we have everybody together. We were talking, actually we tried to start the podcast 3 times. Restream is having issues today. So we already did this beginning 3 times. I was saying that it might be over a month, maybe even 2 months that we haven't had the full crew together. Joe thinks it's just a few weeks. No matter how long it's been, it is great to be with all of you guys once again. And we got some quick news here that we are now got a kind of a sponsorship with Manscaped. Support Manscaped. It's the best men's bellow, the waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's performance package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with their exclusive offer to you. 20% off, guys. Free worldwide shipping with the order Tejas. Use Tejas, the discount code at manscaped.com. Well, if our math is correct or their math is correct, it's about 12 million balls. And I know Jonathan Check has a couple of jokes in place for the next few podcasts. Jonathan was able to get his kit before he went to his Alabama trip. So let's start with you, Jonathan. Good night, my friend. How are you doing? How is Alabama, and how is the Manscaped products that you just received?
Yeah, I'm happy to have, well, first of all, to be in a podcast with all 4 of you guys again. Also happy to have gotten the Manscaped package, if you want to say it, the package for your package. And I got it right before we left on this trip to Alabama. So I didn't have much time to try it out, but yeah, there's some useful stuff below and above the belt. Not that this started happening to me 6 months ago, not that it's a sign of me getting old, but did start to get some nose hairs, and what do you know? The package we got, it has a nice nose and ear hair trimmer.
All right.
So it's not just for keeping yourself clean down low.
All right, sounds good, man.
As for Alabama, it's been a nice trip.
All right.
I didn't really say anything about that.
I do.
Ladies in Alabama, be on the lookout. Jonathan Check is ready and nicely, freshly.
I was gonna say, and Joe, I know, Joe, you are a little bit jealous because you wanted the kit also. I know that you're jealous. So, how are you, Joe? How are things down there in the Borderland?
Hey, what's going on, Roberto, Jonathan, Edson? It's a pleasure to be back. Things are going great. Just here another day coming off of the Locos regular season finale, which we'll talk about. And we'll get plenty of analysis going into that game and what happened or what didn't happen because of that result.
I think it's sad that El Paso is not making the playoffs. It's one of the few teams of our coverage of the Striker overall that didn't make the playoffs, joining Houston Dynamo and Atlanta United. Otherwise, all of our teams, including the Dash, made the playoffs this year, which is pretty cool. And we got a ton of content coming out in the coming days. So if you're listening to this, make sure that if you're not a subscriber of the Striker, subscribe to the Striker. You got the 30-day free trial. It's going to take you all the way to the end of playoffs, plus some of the World Cup content that we're generating, that we're going to be creating, which is very cool, very local oriented, the content that we're going to be doing. So you're not going to be able to get that anywhere else. So make sure that you subscribe to the Striker. Yeah. And we'll talk a lot about El Paso. I think it's, like we said, a sad moment, but I think there's some good over the bad. At least I have some things to talk about. Let's see what Joe talks about in that moment. And then we go to Edson. Edson, who would say on the beginning of the season? So first of all, good night, but who would say at the beginning of the season that RGV would get on the last game of the season with chances of making the playoffs, with good chances of making the playoffs, and El Paso would be out? I don't think anybody would have guessed that way. How are you, brother? You're muted also, man.
I blame Restream. Anyway, Good evening, Roberto. Good evening, Joe. Good evening, Jonathan. Honestly, nobody, not even myself. And I have the receipts to prove that I had lost faith in RGV after that South Texas Derby match. And somehow RGV was able to turn it around and not just have the opportunity to not just qualify to the playoffs, but actually make it to up to 5th place.
In style,
Exactly.
playing well, getting great results, right? It's been great. All right, so just so we go over like we always do here, right? Which, by the way, I didn't ask, but what is the hat today?
I don't want to talk about it, but yeah, it's the playoff hat for Daniel Suarez. Sadly, he got eliminated this Sunday, so I'm still a little depressed.
Well, but you're still giving your full support wearing the hat, which is good. No matter the result, you give it the support. So, but going back to our normal, start of our podcast, just a reminder that with the results over the weekend that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, San Antonio ends up, before this last round, in first place, 76 points, 33 games played. RGV sitting 6th with 46 points, 2 points behind New Mexico United with 33 games. So everybody has 1 game left, with the exception of El Paso that's sitting 8th today with 46 points with all 36 games, with a chance of finishing in 9th. In the case that Las Vegas Lights makes points over the weekend. So San Antonio, the best team in the whole league. So let's start with San Antonio, who had an interesting game, and Jonathan is still in Alabama a few days afterwards. You're not coming back, is that it? You moved to Alabama, Jonathan?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm going to be covering all the wonderful soccer happening here in Alabama. It's probably more than we all realize, but certainly not as much as Texas, where we started this all. Like you said, it was a very interesting game. First of all, it wasn't such an unusual pattern. We see SAFC kind of at times maybe not looking like the best side on the road, and yet somehow finding a way to win. That's not a new thing this year. But I think one of the things that sort of stood out for me, and that I think should be taken as one of the big takeaways from this game, is SAFC, even though it's still chasing some records and got the result, took the chance to rotate.
Yeah, we're losing Jonathan a little bit. The Wi-Fi at the hotel not that good.
So, before the match, the likes of PC, Mohamed Abu, and Samuel.
So Jonathan, we lost you for a few minutes there when you were talking about the game itself. But again, you said that a similar profile of other games. You guys won 2. San Antonio won 2-1, playing away. How important? What is the importance of this game, this win, for this next weekend in the playoffs?
I think it says something really good for SAFC, that it was able to rotate some players, that a few key players like PC, Mohamed Abu, and Samuel Adeniran were injured. I'm not entirely sure if they actually picked anything up, or if it was just rest, but under a different name. But the fact that SAFC was able to get some quality performances from some of its squad players, some guys who haven't even really come off the bench that much this year. The likes of Atez Diouf and Jordan Ayumbila making his first start in USL Championship play. So I just think it bodes really well for SAFC going forward, that yes, it was still able to get the result, and it did it with a fairly different lineup this year than they've usually had.
All right. So again, San Antonio is sitting in a very comfortable position. It's not. We can already confirm that San Antonio only plays at home from now until the end of the tournament, right, Jonathan? So even if it gets to the final we would have the final of the USL Cup in San Antonio in Texas, which would be great. So let's see how that plays out. Going down south on I-35 to McAllen, RGV beat Phoenix with 2-1. But most important, or the best part of the weekend for RGV, I don't know if it was the victory itself or if it was the Edson raid, if I could say, or his explosion on a live that he was doing after the game against a Phoenix Rising player that I think you use. I think the best compliment that you gave to the player was calling him a coward, and it was from that below. It was worse than that on your live. Tell us what happened, Edson.
So obviously going to give a little bit of context because everything that happened in the game kind of explains why Hurst did what he did. So we knew coming into this match that Phoenix Rising was going to be taking risks. They were going to, because it was, they either won or they were eliminated from the playoffs, right? So they put their lives on the line to be able to get a positive result at HEB Park. Fortunately for RGVFC, they were able to contain Phoenix Rising in the first half. Jonas Gelbert gets a goal in the first half. The second half, you started to see Phoenix Rising get a lot more momentum, especially with the fact that Phoenix Rising scored 2 minutes into the second half. So from that point on, it was mostly the possession of Phoenix Rising, and they were trying and they were and getting some shots on goal that were either blocked by the defenders or saved by Tyler Derrick. And when it looked like Phoenix Rising was playing their best, Jonas Gelbert comes back and scores another goal in the a couple of minutes later. It was in like the 55th minute to give the lead back to RGV. And as the game continued, Phoenix was still unable to break apart the defense. They were starting to get desperate. Phoenix gets a blatantly bad penalty call, in their favor. Jonathan Ricketts does pull on Babukar Jai, but the contact was outside the box. Jai falls in the box. Referee, first of all, takes forever to even say if it was a foul or not. And then when he does, he calls it a penalty. But as they say colloquially in soccer, ball don't lie. Tyler Derrick saves the penalty. And from then on, it was just RGV controlling the tempo, controlling their desperation. And then in stoppage time, there was a play where Tyler Derrick comfortably, lies down, grabs the ball from the shot, and Hurst comes in and goes out of his way to kick Tyler Derrick in the head. Gets the red card for that play, leaves Phoenix Rising with 10. RGV gets the victory. But the fact of the matter is, for me, it was just frustrating to see how, a player would have a complete disregard for the safety and well-being of a fellow competitor in the sport, because we know how delicate, head injuries are. How long have we been in globally in the sport been all about, taking care of concussions and concussion protocols? And this guy comes in and, pretty much without the ball in play and and to me, and I stand by it, a cowardly move by Hurst to kick Tyler Derrick in the head. And the worst part is it plays against Phoenix because what you're doing is that you're allowing RGV to kill time.
Clock. Crazy, but it's emotions are always tough to deal with, and elimination like that, it is hard. I'm not justifying, not saying that the guy is right. I think it's absolutely bad, and hopefully, I don't know if the USL has announced any extra punishment for him or not. Maybe not, especially with Phoenix being out of the play from now on. Most likely, nothing will happen. But let's talk about RGV moving forward. right? And I'm going to change a little bit of the structure of the podcast today. We usually talk about the games that happen, then we talk about the coming weekend. But I think it's a good moment for us to talk about RGV with the victory 2-1 over Phoenix and the point that they got or against the two best teams in the Eastern Conference before that we talked a lot in an extension over the last few podcasts. RGV comes to a very comfortable position this weekend. Is it fair to say it's a comfortable position, being 2 points above the playoff line, playing Monterrey at home, who's officially out of the race, so has nothing to do.
Yes, so it is. They are in a comfortable position. The USL has them a 97% chance of making it to the playoffs. Ran the calculations. The Toros are in if they win and if they draw, because even if Las Vegas Lights get a victory this Saturday against LA Galaxy 2, and RGV get a draw, RGV has the head-to-head advantage in head-to-head goal differential over the Lights. So that gives them the opportunity to make it to the next round.
If they lose a tie or a loss for Las Vegas, for LA Galaxy makes RGV makes the playoff.
Correct. So the only combination that plays against RGV is if they lose and Las Vegas wins.
All right. And a reminder that it doesn't look like, but it's a derby. Las Vegas and LA Galaxy, it's a derby. Las Vegas is the second team for LAFC. A lot of the players have contracts with LAFC. So there's that relationship between the organizations. So I don't think the Lights are going to come slow in this game, and they're going to try to do. The Galaxy is going to come strong on this game. Try to take LAFC down. So my next question to you before we go to El Paso and talk about El Paso and then talk about San Antonio's next game this weekend. How do you think Cabrera is going to set this team? Is he setting the team for this weekend to sit down and guarantee the tie, or is he going to go and try to get the 3 points?
So actually today there was a media availability with Wilmer Cabrera, and he laid it all on the line, and he said, we have to respect Monterey Bay FC, because while they are eliminated, that doesn't make them any less dangerous. They had a very good second half of the season, and they want to finish the season strong. And at the end of the day, we have to go into this match thinking that we don't have this playoff spot guaranteed to us, which technically they don't. So from the way Wilmer Cabrera expressed himself today in the availability, I highly doubt that he's going to be able to just settle with a draw. Now he's going to go out for those 3 points. He has to, because they're playing at home, right? They want to be able to get an opportunity to make it fifth if New Mexico loses. So there's still a lot on the line.
RGB is fifth, which could end up giving an advantage on the next round, depending on how the other results go and whoever wins after that.
Yeah, correct. Right? So we actually talked about this right now on my show. So if the second, third, and fourth place lose in this first round, and RGV goes into the playoffs as fifth, they have an opportunity to host the Western Conference semis.
All right, cool. Let's go to El Paso. A sad ending to a roller coaster season, I think we could call it, right, Joe? A win against Orange County last week, 2-1, and then a loss to Tampa Bay, 3-1 yesterday, which puts El Paso out of playoff contention. Do we even need to talk about these two games, or should we just talk about the season overall, Joe?
No, I mean, the last game, basically El Paso went into an opportunity where if they won and depended on at least 3 different teams to lose one of their games, El Paso would have made it. I think their percentage going into Wednesday's game was over 80% to make the playoffs. And they still failed to do so. And the reason why I want to bring up, Roberto, the last game is because it puts a punctuation on a trend that El Paso was not able to overcome over the course of this 2022 season. And that trend was El Paso did not beat a single team, regardless of the conference, that was in the top 3 positions in the table all season long. It didn't matter if the third place fluctuated to 4th or whatever. When El Paso faced a team
Somebody that was in the top 3, they
positions,
never took good results.
They never got a win. They never got a win. So, I think that says a lot about the season that was for El Paso. They failed to do that. They weren't a very good team overall. Not only that, the record also speaks for itself. They won 13 games and lost 14 of them. They were under 500 from that standpoint.
Let's ask you something, Joe. Thinking of a transition year, right? They had a very stable coach until last year, right? An organization that, fit very well from day one, right? It worked very well, like a machine. Good results, good everything. Coach leaves, Coach Laurie leaves, new coach comes in. Could we consider this a transition year with some positives to build for next year, especially some of the good results that they had, right? They showed that offensive style many moments during the season, which was not a regular thing, but there were moments it was often that we saw that offensive team coming out, which we know is what the organization wanted from this coach at this point, right?
Yeah, it was an offensive team, but then on the flip side of that coin, Roberto, when things went south and went bad, they went down in flames in a spectacular way. And that's one thing that I talked about. I asked John Hutchinson about, and I want to have a bigger conversation with him about this. Is I asked him on Saturday after the game with Orange County. I go, can you explain to me why? In the 4 years that El Paso has existed, never once has El Paso gotten a result where they've been the inferior team or been dominated, and they some way managed to get one in the net, and then that's it, the game's over, and the other team played better than El Paso, and El Paso gets the result. That's never happened, and it didn't happen this year either. However, on the flip side of that coin, the slightest mishap of the slightest slip of concentration, the slightest letdown in intensity, and El Paso was scored on. And that's kind of how things have happened for El Paso in all 4 years of existence. And I asked him why, and he just kind of simply said, well, that's the El Paso effect. I still haven't been able to quite put my finger on it, or something towards that effect. And that's another thing that hindered El Paso a lot. Not to mention, you mentioned about the good things that happened for El Paso this year, Roberto. You feel free to contribute, but pretty much the only one for me is Diego Luna went off to greener pastures in the MLS, and I'm assuming El Paso got good money for it, which is, that's the only positive thing. Other than that, it's rather difficult.
Positive, it's almost a negative for this year, right? Because we can say El Paso was created. Diego Luna was created for El Paso in the last year or so.
And I also have a counterbalance to what you said about a new coach coming in and it being a transitional year for them. Yes, a new coach came in, but the key pieces for this El Paso team stayed behind. Andrew Fox, Dylan Maris, Lucho Solignac, Yuma, Richie Ryan, and I'm leaving a couple more off that are important and are the foundation for this team. They're still here. And I think with every passing week, for say the last 6 weeks of the season, I think myself and other people that cover this team locally in the media, not that there was tension in the locker room. I think there was a degree of something was there. There wasn't harmony in that locker room.
There's no doubts. There's no doubts that there's disappointment in this locker room, right? It's a team that, like we said, has been very strong over the last, 3 years. Come to this year and is not able to produce in a regular manner.
Right.
It creates disappointment, and then it is hard to bring the locker room together. But different than what I said about Austin FC last year, and I don't know why I'm bringing this up because it makes me look bad, but I'll do it anyway. I would have fired Josh Wolf last year, for example, from Austin FC because of what happened during the year. The team didn't look good. It looked very bad. The results were bad. It didn't matter. It was an expansion franchise, but there was nothing that could show me last year that team would be great this year, and ends up that they make the playoffs in second place this year. They keep their head coach. I look bad with all my comments, but life goes on. I don't feel that I can make that same statement that I made last year about Josh Wolf to Hutchinson this year. I would keep him. I think there are things to build on top of him from what he did this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, a lot of people are wondering if he's going to stay or go up. Personally, I think he stays.
No,
I don't
he
think
stays. He's staying.
I don't think the
I doubt
Locomotive
that
front
he
office is going to be willing to go through another coach search and having to start from scratch again. Even going into the 2023 season, I will say this quickly. I don't think he's necessarily going to be on the hot seat. I think his seat's going to be plenty warm, but I don't think he'll be on the hot seat. And it's just like I mentioned in my tweet yesterday after New Mexico got the win last night over LA Galaxy 2. Now all that's left to do is, Hutchinson turns in his season report to Alan Ledford and Andrew Forrest, and it's time for Andrew Forrest and Alan Ledford of Mountain Star Sports Group to sit down and to discuss what they need to do for the next season. Because, like I said, these next 3 to 4 months fly by.
When you're talking about the hot seat, I was going to say exactly that. I don't see Alan and Andrew making a move or making him feel that he's on a hot seat. I think they're going to be much more looking on planning for next year and using the concept of, hey, we started the season earlier than anybody else now, right? They're going to be able to really plan this.
And because of that, guys, El Paso next year, they are not going to be allowed to have a slow start. That's one thing that should not be allowed, because if he can't figure it out, if Hutchinson's team doesn't pass the eye test immediately in the first 3 to 4 matches, then you might start second guessing him staying for a second.
I don't know. Like, I think the last thing El Paso needs is for them to run the club like if it was a Liga MX club, and the fact that, then they're trying to rebuild something. They only give them like 3-4 games, and it's like, now you're out because they go on a losing streak.
Right. I'm not saying even then that they'll change them, Edson. I'm just saying things are gonna that will be the perfect recipe for a bad year moving forward for the rest of 2023. Because if he can't figure it out, and if you're still making the same kind of mistakes, I'll give you even the first half dozen games of the season, then you're allowed to question Hutchinson's system.
Yeah, but the front office for El Paso has to give him the financial support for him to bring the players that best fit his system. I think people need to understand that this season he had to pretty much play with what he had
with the players that he had.
No. And that's where I disagree with you. That's one thing. I mean, and I'm sure we'll do an end of the year analysis on our teams later, and I'll save this one for a later date. One of the biggest disappointments this year was any player that they brought in this season left a lot to be desired, with the exception of Eric Calvillo, who at best was an above average player for the Locomotive.
Fair. So the hiring overall was not positive.
Yeah, whoever they brought in, that scouting eye this year between Hutchinson, Andrew and Alan Ledford, it failed big time, and that much I can say this year.
We're going to have a whole off season to talk about all of those things, and I think it's going to be we're going to try, and I think we're going to be able to. We have a good relationship with all the clubs. Maybe we're able even to bring some of those people to talk to us and help us also do that analysis with them, how they looked and what how the year went and what to expect for next year. All right, back to San Antonio. San Antonio has a last game with Orange County. There was something very interesting last week or a week and a half ago. Orange County played San Diego in a game, and the interview post game, Donovan said, "It is incredible that Orange County was sitting last in the Western," and he was saying that Orange County, if they were in the Eastern Conference, they would have a playoff spot in the tournament. No, El Paso beat Orange County a week ago, and now Jonathan finishing the regular season against Orange County also in San Antonio. Is this a game that matters whatsoever for San Antonio?
Well, sure it is. SAFC has the chance to chase a number of USL records. I mean, they already tied the most away wins in a season. They are tied for the most shutouts by a goalkeeper. I think it's by a goalkeeper, not by a team itself. Or maybe it is by the team itself. One of the two. And it could also have the most points in a season. So it definitely matters. But at the same time, if SAFC sets a few records and then goes into the playoffs, completely blows it, was it really worth it? I don't know. I think if you ask SAFC fans, 10 out of 10 times they would take winning a championship over setting these last couple of records. And I'll also just say, how
do you think Marcina is gonna come with the full squad with his full strength, or is he gonna save some people for the playoff?
I would say he might still hold a couple players back, but Mitchell Tainer, for example, who some people are calling potentially the league's MVP, we'll see how that turns out. He just had a 2-game suspension. You would think maybe he at least starts the match or comes on at some point just to make sure he stays fresh and everything. But I think if SAFC was able to get a result away to Birmingham with a mixed lineup, I don't see why they can't do it at home against Orange County. You just have to neutralize Milan Iloski.
Yeah, guys, just a reminder that SAFC has a bye on the first round of playoffs because it's sitting first. Can you guys confirm with me? The first round is midweek, right? And then San Antonio plays on the weekend, or is a full week? So
Full week.
A full week. All right. So the first round is next weekend, and then SAFC hosts the worst position team that classifies that qualifies for the next round at home on the following week. All right. I think that's pretty much it, guys. I think we got a great content. I think there's a lot of questions that we still have to discuss and talk about moving forward, especially for El Paso, because we're already talking about 2023 for El Paso. But I think there's still a lot of good soccer to happen in USL in Texas over the next several weeks, with San Antonio guaranteed in the playoffs. And, like we said, RGV very close to be there, right? So anything else, guys? Anybody want to say anything before we go?
So real quick, Richie Ryan just announced a couple minutes ago that he is leaving El Paso on Twitter.
I already
What
knew
does that mean, Joe?
I was just sworn to secrecy. I promised that I already knew that, but I was sworn to secrecy, so I respected that. Sad day, real quick, and this is another conversation for another day. A player that liked being here in El Paso, wanted to stay here, and it's unfortunate that they had the dispute earlier in the season. How much that dispute affected things at the end of this year, which we're at now, or didn't. I don't know. I'm not going to add flame to that fire, whatever. But I just think it's a shame that knowing he wanted to stay and knowing he enjoyed everything about being in this community, obviously being a professional soccer player for the Locomotive, it's a shame they couldn't make it work. And at the end of the day, it's a business. But I also think someone like Richie Ryan, who has meant so much for this team, the foundation, the pillar, one of the pillars of this team in the first 4 years of existence, it's a shame that an exception couldn't be made, or an agreement couldn't be made to where the organization gave a little bit more than they probably would have to another player in this circumstance.
Well, maybe they did also, Joe, and it's
Say
hard.
that again?
Like it's and there's cycles, right? There's cycles in
Right.
soccer. There's cycles that end and we move forward. But yeah, it is what it is, and maybe we'll have a little bit more on that since it officially just happened. We'll have more on that next week, and again, especially because there's not going to be much to talk about El Paso, and so those are the things that we're going to end up talking more than anything else. All right, guys, thank you very much. We're ready to go. You know, great weekend for soccer in Texas overall, from MLS, NWSL, USL. There's so much going on, so much fun, so much, you know, if you love soccer, this is the moment. And this is the moment to subscribe to the Striker. Follow us on social media. You know, we're doing daily Twitter spaces about NWSL, MLS playoffs, and all of that. And there's so much going on. So again, follow us on social media. So subscribe to the Striker, and always support local soccer. See you guys.